All right, so let's talk a little bit about the guidelines to becoming a better writer. When we think about the writing process, it's critical to understand that the process itself will help you become a better, more creative writer. And so it's important that you understand the writing process that you use and whether or not that writing process is effective and efficient. It's true that mystery cloaks the creative element of putting words on paper, but creativity is rarely conjured up. It does take some organization and structure, at least sort of, to become more creative. And if you wait for creativity to strike, you may never complete a project. Many of us say, well, the creativity just hits me. Well, I'm not 100% sure that that happens, but I do have a couple of little stories about being more creative and getting yourself into that creative state. One story is the story of incubation. Many of us have had this happen to us. We'll be trying to think of the name of a friend that we had in high school, or the name of a song, or the person who was the group or the singer of a song, and we can't remember it. And we think and think and think, and we just can't remember it, and so then we just forget about it. And then a day or so later, you'll be driving down the street or riding in a car, and bam! That name or that song or that idea will come to you, or that person's name will come to you. How does that happen? Well, that happens because even though you are not mentally focused on that particular idea and solving that problem and coming up with that name, your subconscious is working. And part of the creativity process is to let your subconscious be the creative element for you. And so I always like to use the idea of get the creative idea in someone's mind and then let it incubate for a while. And with a little bit of luck and a little bit of effort, the creative ideas will come to a person. Now, I use that a lot. One of the things that I used to like to do a lot is sort of incubate, think about something for a while, and then go for a long run. When you are out running or doing some sort of physical activities, there's something called endorphins that kick into your system, and these endorphins often fuel a creative line of thought. And so I like to use that incubation and then some sort of physical activity, not just waiting for that to happen. Another example is sort of putting the pieces together and then trying to talk your way through them. Some of the most creative ideas that we've come up with over the years has been by fleshing out all of the situational factors, sorting out what we're trying to accomplish, and then talking about it. And as we talk and talk and talk about it, it's a little bit like solving a puzzle. Someone says something, someone else says something, and before you know it, we've come up with a creative solution for that particular communication or that particular messaging. So, my argument is find out how to put yourself into a creative state of mind. Find out what triggers your creative nature and your creative state of mind. And if you're able to do that, I think you'll find out that this is very often when the creativity actually happens, is when you have managed to put yourself into that creative state of mind. Now, there is a process that you can follow to do the work of writing. It's a process that follows practical steps. And of course, and you saw maybe a little picture of it on the last slide. This is a step-by-step approach that works for just about any kind of writing project. And hopefully creativity will spring up along the way as you take the steps. But remember, you might do some incubation and you might do some puzzle solving to see if you can't get things started along the way and juice up the creative process. This step-by-step approach is one way to do this. There are lots of others. But if this approach works great, if you can modify this approach and it works even better, that's even better yet. Then it's your personal writing process. Step 1, record your idea. If you have an idea for a project or for a message or for a communication, whether it's a blog post, an article, a letter, a web page, or whatever, write it down. Now you have to get from that idea to finished project, but it's important that you write down the ideas to start with. Many times when we're trying to come up with a creative strategy for our marketing case competitions, we'll write down 6 or 7 or maybe even more than that ideas. And then we will start to talk our way through them and ask ourselves what kinds of things, how good are each of these ideas? Will they in fact be able to, can we hang enough information on them to convince people that this is a good idea? Okay. All right, so try this. Write down the idea for your project. Make sure you have a system in place for capturing ideas. You may have to write down more than an idea and then choose them. Write down where your reader will start with the idea. That is, when you first contact the reader or the person who is the target, what do they know about the whole idea? Write down where you want them to be at the end. Of course, that would be, we would call that point B, but it could be called point Z. And write down the steps that we're going to need to take to get someone from point A to point B along the way. Step 2, create a structure for your project. Review your list of ideas and look for patterns. For instance, sequence. Your points can be organized chronologically in a specific order. Or your ideas can be listed and organized somehow topically. Look from simple to complex. Look from whole parts and find out which parts are subsumed under other ideas. And then compare your points across ideas, and then organize your points into the structure you've chosen. Yes, you can call this an outline if you'd like, or you can call it whatever else you might like. Step 3, write the content. This is hard work. Once you choose a structure, fill in the content from your list of points. Try some of these for writing tips. If the idea of filling in whole pieces makes you quake at the keyboard, then just do one section at a time and then take a break. Or do it in outline and bullet format until you get the whole thing put together. Discard ideas that don't fit well. But what we always do in our projects is we do it like as if we're building a PowerPoint. We move it to the end of the PowerPoint and don't delete it until we're sure that we don't need it. Read through the project and rework it until the content flows well and makes logical sense. Now you have a rough draft. Step 4, self-edit your project. Good writing means rewriting. Most of you don't ever rewrite anything. You work up against the deadline and then you finish it, and maybe you go through spell check with it, maybe not even spell check, and you never really go through and reread it for persuasion, creativity, clarity, those sorts of things. Good writers always self-edit their work. Rework and refine your writing so that it's correct, easy to read, and clean. Things like split infinitives, those sorts of things. End sentences, so they start and end with different words. Look, actually read the content after you have put it together. I do this all the time when I am writing letters of recommendations for students, because it has to sound good when someone reads it, not only make sense. Step 5, proofread your project. Leave time for proofreading. Then reread it carefully. Read it out loud. Read it slowly. Let someone else read it. Correct any typos. Once you actually have this thing now put together, now you have something that looks a lot more like a final project, and now you're ready to go.